that third round is about that acknowledging your own desire to be healed and the healing of those people within the circle and those within your life. So the way it works is that we have two vessels. One is a water that's we hold the water in and the water is poured. The reason why I want symbolically want the water to be pouring is the fluidity of the Holy Spirit. Right? The water is not stagnant. Right? The water actually always flows. It flows from one vessel to another vessel, just like a prayer, just like healing. Right? It's not about it being constitutive upon itself. It's the fact that the Spirit flows from one vessel. My prayer to you, my love for you, my hope for you is actually my seeing beauty in you is always a thou relationship. And so is healing. Right? So you enter into that profound state of healing. And by then everybody's actually in a place because the circle has set and the circle is strong. Right? Because again, if you pray too early or ask for healing too early, the circle is not strong enough to hold it. Right? So by then everybody's they've smelt the pain of the other person, and they can see, in the other person's eyes the love they need to see in forgiveness and in healing. So then then the bowl goes around again to show the fluidity of the Spirit. So then the bowl that I poured from the vessel into the bowl, and that bowl goes around, and again everybody prays aloud. And I ask that, and I say that part of the prayer that's like, pray your thing aloud. It's safe here, or pray things that you know is safe, and so people go around and they pray in the bowl. So then sometimes that kind of ends whichever way it ends. Like it's ordered, but not regimented.
Okay.
And so that water is God, and we offer all those prayers up to the one that actually can answer the prayer, right? And we're part of that answer. We cannot forget that. And part of my prayer is that you are the very answer to the prayer in other people's lives. Not only to pray with your knees bent, you're supposed to pray with your feet moving. That's usually how I end something with a prayer. So that there is the idea of sacramentality is that it is God's grace here, God's will being done by the very acts of humanity, transformed by the Spirit. So then the last act is the Thanksgiving Circle. And Thanksgiving Circle is, I took a class at Regis, and it was on the Eucharistic prayer. It was as a high-end, like an advanced degree, hokey schmokey class, right? But the thing is, I don't think everybody learned from it, not from the professor, but from each other, because of the diversity of people in there. There was no two of anything. Only one Catholic, one Anglican, one Orthodox, one Coptic, all together trying to work this out. And we were able to have, and all priests, and all understanding the very nature of what it means for salvation history to be exposed. Right, the fact that there was a participating component to it. But at the end of the day, it's all about Thanksgiving. The great Thanksgiving that Jesus Christ gave us to remember His sacrifice in thanksgiving. Not necessarily to dwell in the fact that we're all mortal sinners, which is true, but we're saved sinners, we're redeemed sinners, and we're resurrected sinners. So that's why we have to give thanks. Like joyous thanks. Not it's okay. But actually joyous thanks. So then that's where the fourth component, and it's critical to me that we have a period of Thanksgiving. Because you move from it. Like the circle is a moving thing, right? Because it goes from these things, like confession and confessing who God is, to knowledge and knowledge of who God is, and healing and the healing of God in our lives, and the thanksgiving of each of those components moves in a way that is the way I think people really think, right? And because it's ongoing, because As you need to Thanksgiving, you need to confess again, right? The circle doesn't end, right? It doesn't end. That is, you are continue living out that circle throughout the rest of those times until you do a swat again, or until you do a lodge again, or until you pray again. So then but the thing is, it's not as rigid of the Eucharist. That's why I don't call it a Eucharist or a communion, because it's not those things. Because there's no epiclesis, and there's no, but there can be, right? It's not devoid of it, and it doesn't mean that the Holy Spirit has not transformed those things into who He is. Because it's not my magic hands, right? That's the thing that I think is a load of shit. It's the fact that my hands have to go and wiggle, right? And in a particular way. Otherwise people think, oh my God, am I just eating bread? Or am I eating Jesus? Right? And at the end of the day, the intention of the celebrant is important, sure. But the sacramentality is that God enters into that person's life and changes it. Changes just like that bread is transformed. Just like, and we don't use wine. Because Aboriginal people never used wine. They never had any fermented fruit, but they used cranberries. Cranberries were critical. Saskatoons, were in the making of pemmican, in the making of preservation. So they would pound these berries into the meat as a form of preserving it. And again, in the sweat lodge, between the third and fourth round is this idea that you need nourishment. Like in today, Thanksgiving's readings were about I am the true bread, and the same thing. I am the true nourishment. It's not the fact I can fill my gut, but but God enters into my fullness of my life, and nourishes it, fills it, and pours it all out. So that's the last thing is the Thanksgiving thing. So standing stones is about three things. It's about understanding what it means to reconcile. It's about going into a deep form of education, a reciprocal education, of a loving education. And the third thing is the fact that it is a service or a liturgy or an act of worship. Right? And all those things make up standing stones. And standing stones is not the particularity of the symbols of it. And that's one thing that people have to really, standing stones was developed in a year, and another year to make it work. And it's going to be taking another 20 years to actually get people to realize you don't have to be an Aboriginal person to do it, for starters. And the thing is it's about that this liturgy is born of this land. Born of this land. Born of the gospel touching this land. And, percolating up for all of us to use. Right? These symbols of hope, these symbols of light, these symbols of covenant, these symbols of thanksgiving are about this particular place called Kanata. Where we enter into a place of what you're doing, where we enter into a place where we share together, right? Yeah. And that is what Standing Stones is about. Those three things, with that understanding that this is a gift, not from me, or I put it together, but God is working to transform, God's people for God's use.